Welcome to On the Beat, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every week, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network.
Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into On the Beat, brought to you exclusively, as Bruce Nolan just said, on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe, a show where we bring you, as he said, a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter or journalist every single week to talk about our beloved Buffalo Bills and the topics swirling around them. And this week, the Buffalo Bills have reported to camp, so it's an especially exciting week. But my name is Joe Miller. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired, alongside my co-host, the Big O, Jerry Ostrowski, former Buffalo Bill, former Swiss Army knife, as we like to call him here on the show. Please do us a favor. Please like, please subscribe, whatever platform you are consuming this live video on. Please like, please subscribe. If you're consuming it as a podcast on, what is this? Today is Tuesday. So on Wednesday or Thursday, please like, please subscribe. But it is so good to have you. And we are so excited about our guest here. The Buffalo Bills checked into camp today. So we're going to be talking all about Buffalo Bills training camp. But now joining us, sports editor at the Batavia Daily News and the editor of the Bills Digest, beat reporter as well, Alex Brasky. Alex, how are you this fine Western New York summer day? And have you checked into camp yet?
I'm doing well. No, I typically travel from Batavia back and forth to Rochester. It's about a 40-minute drive each day.
So you cheat.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
You cheat.
If I could commute, I would have commuted too, man. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I'm not a big dorm room guy, and I like sleeping in my own bed. And like I said, I'm kind of halfway from Buffalo, so it takes some of the driving out of it. I have not checked in yet. I'm excited to go tomorrow, though. This is, I think, my third or fourth camp covering it full time. So always an exciting time of year, a reunion with the fellow beat reporters, and we get to see each other over the course of the next few weeks. And it's just a great time. You get to interact with the fans. You get to be out there in shorts and a T-shirt doing your job. So, and you get to see this team come together. You get to see the beginnings of what is a long season, and to be there at its genesis is, I feel very fortunate to do what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's got to be great. And it ruins my last fun question, which was the whole lead up to, like, do you guys all hang out and play cards in the dorm rooms like the players do? And apparently Alex goes home. So no. So we're not even going to get to that question.
I have gone out with a few of the guys in the past. Maybe I'll ramp that up this year. Go out, get some grub, some garbage plates. I know that Gene Battaglia, Mike Danger of the Fan Rochester, we got some plans in store. So there is some room for camaraderie. Just no overnight stays for me. I like to get home.
Yeah, it's there's nothing like your own bed, right? So it's basically what it comes down to. But welcome to everybody joining us live right now. Richard Rush, Maggie, Scott Blakely, so good to have you guys. And everybody else, if you're watching us live on Facebook or Twitter, X, jump over to YouTube. That's the comment section. The community there is just so much better. But we're not going to waste any time. We're gonna dive right in with the questions, because it's finally here, right? So the off season, for the most part, is finally over. Real football is about to begin. The guys are not going to be in pads to start, but they're going to be out there and doing football things. And everybody's got tickets for training camp and the red versus blue game, and things are just obviously ramping up. But as we said, the Buffalo Bills, all the players reported today. What is the schedule for pressers this week? Just so we all kind of know. And will we hear from players tomorrow? Is it later in the week? Do you know what the schedule is as far as that goes? And who are you interested in hearing from?
Yeah, we'll hear from Sean McDermott before practice tomorrow. We'll hear from Brandon Beane after practice around noon tomorrow. So a big day tomorrow. I can't recall if in the past we get players the first day. Josh Allen usually leads things off in that regard. I want to say they wait till day 2. I'll check on that as we talk here. But you also hear from the coordinators.
Right.
You hear from Joe Brady on Thursday, Bobby Babich on Friday, and then Matthew Smiley on Sunday. So that's the way they kick things off. And you really get players each day. You can also put in requests if you want to do a one-on-one interview with somebody and kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of their story. But for me, it's really takeaways at training camp, paying attention to the comings and goings of the roster, the camp battles to focus on, and just the positional competitions. It's all fun and ready to get started.
What is the access that I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about this? What is the access that they give you as it pertains to like maybe columns or just specific stories when it comes to like the coordinators, the coaching staff, the players, yada yada?
Well, in terms of the one-on-one, you have to put in a request before you'd like to interview the player. You can't do one-on-ones with coaches, as far as I know. For the most part, it's just you stick with players, and certain people within the public relations department have responsibilities with certain players. So you put in those requests, and if they're granted, you sit down with the player. You're granted an allotted amount of time, and you go through. You get their story. Really, you're not looking for scandalous information in these one-on-one interviews. It's really to spotlight the player and to allow the fans to learn more about their story and whatnot.
Super good.
You know, Alex, I got to ask this question. It seems like every time we come into training camp, there's a main story or an underlying story that everybody knows about, or people want to ask questions about. Obviously, the last few years, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs no longer on the team. Is there an underlying story this year? Or is this finally camp just show up and we sing Kumbaya and make s'mores and everybody goes to practice?
Yeah, my cohort of the Batavia Daily News, AJ Sobolski, has been saying it since the spring training program began. Finally, we're getting back to football in Buffalo. It's no longer the drama that we've kind of dealt with the past couple of years. Getting back to the issue at hand, football on the field. I will say maybe the underlying storyline, which is football related, the health of Matt Milano and whether or not he can return to his full efficacy at that linebacker position. If he's able to, the Bills could have one of the top linebacker duos in the league with he and Terrell Bernard. But I think there's a lot of question there. It was good to see him get out during that offseason training program and start to ramp things up. You saw the previous 2 seasons, Tre'Davious White, Von Miller, kind of questioning when those guys were going to return. They started training camp just working with trainers. Seems like Matt Milano has a chance to start training camp being full go and participating in team drills. He was only a participant in individual drills during the offseason training program, but it does seem like there's a chance that sooner rather than later, we might see him in 11-on-11 situations.
Yeah, we had a lot of good conversation around Matt Milano. One show specifically dedicated to him, in as much as the injury he suffered, Jerry also suffered. So Jerry has actually been through the rehab, the situation, obviously the injury, and then the rehab around it as far as that goes. So it'll be interesting. So when we look at this roster specifically, there's some pretty significant battles, and we have talked about wide receiver ad nauseum, not just us, but all of us, right? But there's some significant battles on both sides of the football. In your opinion, what are the 3 biggest roster spots that might be up for grabs on this team, both offense, defense, special teams?
Yeah, the obvious one, you look at wide receiver, a lot of talk throughout this offseason about that position. You lose your top 2 in Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. I'm not so sure there's many roster spots to be decided. I have about 5 roster locks all the way through Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You have Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, and Mac Hollins. I believe those are the roster locks. But beyond that, maybe Chase Claypool is the leader in the clubhouse for that 6th wide receiver role. But at the same time, you have KJ Hamler presents special teams capability and just that raw athleticism and speed that the Bills don't really have elsewhere at that position group. So I think wide receiver is up for grabs in terms of maybe that 6th spot, a potential 7th spot if they do keep Hamler there for that special teams capability, and just how the top of that position on the depth chart is going to work out. Also, you look at defensive line with all they've had to replace there. You lose Leonard Floyd and you lose all your depth on the interior. So a lot of moving pieces there. And also the punter position. You have Sam Martin in contention with Jack Browning going into training camp, the undrafted free agent. Martin was kind of hit or miss last year. And I think the fact that Browning has made it to training camp means that this is a true positional battle.
Yep.
I have to ask you, Alex. I read your article about your kind of predictions on who was going to make the 53, and you brought up a really interesting point, which I had thought about in the past, but I thought you hit it on the head, and it was about Kaiir Elam. Is this a year he's going? This is his third year. Next year, obviously, fourth year. Are they going to pick up options and things like that? If he comes out in training camp, he's healthy now. Last year we heard it was an ankle. Now all of a sudden he's healthy. If he struggles, is he a guy that could be available to other teams for trade? Your opinion on that?
I would say so. I think time is running out for Kaiir Elam. I think they like what they've seen from him during this offseason training program. He did have a couple of splash plays, and with that new positional coach, Jamil Adai, I think he's taking steps in the right direction. But at the same time, if he comes out here during training camp and during the preseason and, for the lack of a better phrase, just throws up all over himself, I think it's going to be tough for the Bills to justify slotting him in as that number 3 wide receiver, especially considering, I don't know if injury struggles is the right way to term it, but you've seen Christian Benford kind of go on and off the field with a couple nicks here and there throughout his young career. So I think relying on Kaiir Elam right now as a number 3 cornerback, I think he's trending toward that being a good situation. But at the same time, he's a bad training camp, a bad preseason away, like you said, maybe being put out there for trade bait or just to maybe usher him off to a different team and go in a different direction. They still have that money from the Tre'Davious White post June 1st release. I think that and edge rusher may be 2 positions that you might want to address with that money.
Joe?
Yeah, it's amazing to me the mistake that was made there. Do you guys have me? Okay.
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay.
I mean that background. Geez, I don't know if we got you. You're like in La La Land out there, the land of milk and honey.
Close, not La La. It's Lime Lake, New York, in the southern tier, Cattaraugus County. But
beautiful.
The mistake that was made, the Bills going after a man coverage guy when they play a lot of zone stuff, especially in the first round. I mean, I remember doing shows around that draft season and who the potential but the draft class and a cornerback was out there. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know of a lot of guys that have splashed or made big, like made a huge name for themselves in that draft class from corner. So it's not like they made a huge miss, but I mean, it's just hard to believe where Kaiir is at this point in his career, being a first round draft pick and behind a 6th round draft pick drafted in the same class. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him, but it feels like even on that defensive piece, right, having that conversation, offense is pretty predictable. We just came off of a 2-week series where we did our pre-camp roster, way too early roster projections, right? And it felt like offense. The biggest question was, are the Bills going to keep 6 or 7 wide receivers, and are they going to keep Reggie Gilliam, right? And you feel like Reggie Gilliam's a lock.
Yeah.
Are there surprises out there for you specifically on defense? Is there somebody that you're expecting to flash? I mean, where are you landing as far as just when you look at and I know you just recently did a roster projection yourself, but who are you expecting to kind of like stick out in camp?
I think Javon Solomon has a good chance to really surprise some people. He and Dwayne Carter, 2 draft picks coming in with a good opportunity to contribute right away. I mentioned the turnover along the defensive line, and you spend the draft capital on these 2 players, and these guys they seem to be players that can contribute immediately. You look at Dwayne Carter's maturity, you look at Javon Solomon coming off an incredible season at the collegiate level, led the nation in sacks. It seems like they can come right in and potentially contribute right away. I think these 2 have a great potential to splash during training camp, and I think they're going to be given every opportunity to contribute at their position, given, like I said, the wide open camp battle for depth positions at both defensive line and edge rusher.
But when I think about Solomon, though, I look at, and I'm playing devil's advocate, I look at his size, and I understand he led the NCAA in sacks. He did it at Troy. And I know that levels and stuff don't necessarily mean anything, but when you start looking at guys like Van Pan Granger, coming from Georgia, multi-year caps, things like that. So you look at competition, you look at his size. I mean, you just think that I know they made the draft capital and things like that, and I would imagine he'll be an incredibly useful big man special teamer, but I don't know. It's hard for me to think about this guy playing the run in the NFL. Are there concerns about how big he is?
Absolutely. Definitely an undersized player, and maybe not someone who has run stuffer written all over him, but I think he could be a pass rushing specialist. And with those top three at the edge rusher position, hopefully you get some semblance of the old Von Miller this year, and you have him alongside Greg Rousseau and AJ Epineza. If you can fit Solomon in on some third downs and some clear pass rushing situations, I think that's the role that you're looking for out of him. Maybe not a 3-down player at this point, maybe never in his NFL career, but I think he can definitely be of use to a team as a pass rushing specialist.
Right. And elaborate on that. I've always felt Greg Rousseau on third down should go down inside over a guard. Mm-hmm. I think Greg Rousseau is an incredibly well-rounded defensive end. Everybody that continually cries for bigger sack totals, I don't know if that's him. He is a run-stopping guy. He can rush the passer some, but he's a big body. I don't think you're ever going to get pass rush specialist out of him. I like him inside over a guard on third down with some mismatches, hands up in the middle, knock passes down. So maybe that's where Solomon, comes into play. But I do have to ask this question because especially with that linebacker room and the corner in the DBs, do you think they're set on these numbers? Like as of last year, we looked at keeping 26 guys on defense when we did our mock-ups. Linebacker has 6 because there's going to be some stuff. I know you had Cam Lewis as a cornerback, but he's also a safety.
Right.
Where does this whole thing intertwine? Will they take one to give to another? Because you start looking at guys like maybe DeMar Hamlin. Are they an odd man out? Not because of them not wanting to keep him, just because of numbers.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me before the offseason training program, I think I would have had DeMar Hamlin on the outside looking in. But the way that he performed, albeit without pads, he was confident out there. He was making plays. He was tipping the ball to Deion Jones, who returned it for a touchdown. And I think he's now far enough removed from that scary situation in Cincinnati that he's trending in the right direction. And with his experience at this position and with the lack of experience that the Bills have at the safety position, I think that also provides some value for him. But at the same time, you do make a good point. They are not very deep at the cornerback position. Cam Lewis, with his versatility at the safety and being able to move over there and potentially be a backup to Teron Johnson. I had both making my final 53-man roster, but I do think that there's some room for shifting here. You have Jamarcus Ingram. The other question here is, I didn't finalize this, and Joe Marino pointed this out on X. I didn't finalize technically my 53-man roster. I left Reed Ferguson as a training camp cut and had yet to decide on who they're going to potentially put on IR.
It's
before
100%. So Reed and I are friends. 100% going to happen. Every year I text Reed after he gets cut, and I'm like, WTF, bro? And it's a joke at this point. And he's like, Don't worry, I'll be back tomorrow.
Right. And at the same time, that means with my 53, the way that I structured it before training camp, mine and AJ's that we agreed on, we actually got the same 53 guys. We didn't decide on that player that Ferguson is going to come back in place of. So whether it be a Jamarcus Ingram who gets left off this roster, whether it be a Daquan Hardy.
With an ankle.
Right. Whether it be one of these offensive linemen, who knows, one of these linebackers. I'm not sure who they're going to decide there. So I guess that kind of remains to be seen. And yeah, I don't think they're set as much as I'm set on my 53. I still think that there are some positions, especially the back half of some position groups lower on the depth chart that are up for grabs here.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. And you brought his name up, Daquan Hardy. And I look at this team. I looked at last year's return men. We're bringing back Zaire.
Yep, looks like that's funny because he texted me and said that his computer might shut down and run some updates, so we may lose Jerry for a couple of minutes. But
it's like earlier in the week when Microsoft wreaked havoc on the entire country. It's now
it wasn't Microsoft; it was CrowdStrike, who's a competitor for the company that I actually work for. But a different conversation. So he was wanting to ask you about returners. Is basically he's texting me right now. So I think the question was just more about returners. Hardy, like what is this Bills team going to do? Because it was interesting because with the changes, right? The punt return is the punt return. We don't really know what to expect on kick return outside of what we have all witnessed, like from the alternative league that was doing the kick return in the model or the fashion that the Bills are about to affect, or the NFL is about to basically adopt. So I think the question was more around that. Basically, where are the Bills going to go? Is there a thought? Is there an idea of what the Bills are potentially going to do just around the kick return situation?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an all-out competition here during training camp. You have Daquan Hardy. He's a good candidate. You have also KJ Hamler, another player that I've mentioned already. I think Hamler's best opportunity, as I said before, is them keeping that seventh wide receiver and maybe keeping him around for that special teams capability. He's also had some punt return ability or experience, both of which came during his collegiate years. He hasn't been much of a returner in the pros. I think he had like a handful when he was in Denver with the Broncos, but hasn't had much experience at the pro level. Did have a lot of experience with Penn State. Daquan Hardy, more of a punt returner, didn't do much in terms of kick returning, but I think this is going to be a battle between those two. Perhaps
Right.
Ty Johnson gets in on the mix. Maybe you see some players that we don't expect. Maybe you
Right.
throw just Chase Claypool back there just for his raw athleticism and to make more use out of him in that sixth wide receiver role. With these changes, it's going to completely change the dynamic of the play. And there's also more to consider in terms of who's going to be kicking off for the Bills. It's always been Tyler Bass, but Jack Browning has some experience as a kicker. So he makes the team. Maybe that leads to him being the kickoff specialist of sorts. So I think there's a lot of questions with this kickoff, and a lot of people are excited to watch it. I don't think I've ever been more excited to watch a kickoff in my entire life.
I'm right there with you. And by the way, we are talking with Alex Brasky, Bills beat reporter and sports editor for the Batavia Daily News, as well as Bills Digest. And just, we do not have an Apple or a Mac sponsorship, but if you were wondering why you should migrate from PC to Mac, Jerry Ostrowski is the living example and of everything. Because the Mac users don't have the problem that Jerry's having right now, where your computer just shuts off and is like, I'm going to force these updates right now.
Right in the middle of the most important show that you've ever had in your entire life.
So super amazing. I have a bunch of questions, and this is a great conversation, Alex. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's shift a little bit to the coordinators. Regarding Joe Brady and this offense, there's been a lot of conversation, and I'm on the opposite side. Like, for me, when you're talking about the run game, and you're talking about Ray Davis, and you're talking about Ty Johnson, who I love, and you're talking about James Cook, and you've got Frank Gore Jr. on this football team, who I don't think for a second, even being an undrafted rookie free agent, somehow doesn't have a career as with the pedigree, the NFL pedigree, and who his dad is. But I want 2020 Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Let's throw the freaking football 80% of the time when nobody could keep up with this offense. But the running game has been a big conversation. We saw Joe Brady be more efficient, utilize it better. Some would argue it made Josh better. I would disagree. I feel like Josh is better in not a hurry up offense, but in a 4 to 6 minute offense where they're coming out in rhythm and time. When they're trying to bleed the clock, I feel like I just don't feel like the offense ever works as well as it does when they're kind of a little more upbeat. Where is the emphasis going to be? What are you hearing? Is it going to be more of a 50-50 run to pass? Is it going to be more run centric this year, or should we expect Josh to be Josh?
I'm not sure if run centric I would go that far, but you're going to see utilization of the run game, as you saw more and more with Joe Brady last season, since he became interim offensive coordinator. James Cook, an incredible season last year. Yes, he did drop the football. He had some fumble concerns, but just the production is undeniable from Cook last season, and he presents that two-way ability, catching it out of the backfield.
Fourth leading rusher in the NFL last year. Fourth,
yes, and sixth in scrimmage yards, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, just to be a top 5, top 10 back in those two categories, just incredible for him. He's probably the most productive running back that they've had since LaShawn McCoy, maybe even more productive than him, considering what he can do in the passing game, like I said, when he holds on to the ball. But you spent the draft pick on Ray Davis for a reason, and he's another player like a Dwayne Carter, a Javon Solomon, who have proven that they are ready. You talked about Javon Solomon's, or Jerry did, about his lack of size, and maybe that holds him back. But in terms of these three players, they seem to be pro ready. Ray Davis, 1,000-yard machine in college. He seems to have the skill set that they're looking for, really an all-around skill set. Not a speed guy, but has the power, has the ability to pass protect, and also can catch it out of the backfield, as we saw this past season at Kentucky. And then you have Ty Johnson, who really came on last season. I looked at his stats during this offseason. Not as much production as I remembered him having. I think he was under 300 yards total, but really a nice first season for him in the limited role that he had with the Bills last year. And I think that trio can really give you what you're looking for if you're Joe Brady, to maybe take a little bit off Josh Allen's plate. You don't want to go away from your best player by any means, but I think they've become a little over-reliant on Allen over these past few years. And I think having that running game, as we saw with the Chiefs last year, when Isaiah Pacheco was running well, that's when the Chiefs were at their best. So if the Bills can replicate that in a sense with the running game, and then you have Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox coming in there with those two tight end sets, I think it's going to be a new look offense from what you're accustomed to seeing with Josh Allen and this team, where they've been spreading it all out under Ken Dorsey and Brian Dable. But I still think you're going to see plenty of Josh Allen within this offense.
I feel like this is this is just off script, so I apologize. I feel like this is one of those areas, as it pertains to the Bills and Josh Allen in particular, that it's not a comparison between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes or anybody else. You know, you look at what Pat Mahomes does, and from a passing standpoint, and I know he can run and he can do those things, but he is a precision, prolific drop back passer that can play off script if he needs to. Whereas Josh thrives in off script. Josh Allen, as much as we don't want him to, and I'm right there, and I've been there for the last several years that I've been doing this thing, right? You know, the more we can get Josh to stop running, the more healthy he's going to be, blah, 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 blah. Can we get him some help? But Josh just strikes me and feels to me like he just lives in that space more like a Terrell Pryor when Terrell was with OSU, like a guy that's just going to take over a football game and let him do it. Or, you know, when you talk about, you know, the Florida Gators and there
he is.
Yeah, there's Jerry. Who am I thinking of that was with the Gators at the time?
Chris Leak?
Tim Tebow. Tebow, where he's just basically Tim Tebow is going to do Tim Tebow.
I thought you were going more deep cut than Tebow.
No. I feel like sometimes Josh doesn't fit the NFL quarterback mold. We had so Jerry and John had a show where they talked about who did you have on with you guys, Jerry, when he talked about the fact that Josh Allen is not a precision quarterback. He's a more of an off structure, like paint you with the football guy. Sorry, I apologize. I just feel like we're trying to put Josh in this NFL mold, and I don't know that it's always relevant, because even from a pass protection standpoint for the back, when you're talking about James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson, how do you find a back that can effectively pass protect when in an off script fashion? Because Josh throws off script more than he throws in that on script three-step drop, 5-step drop, 7-step drop. There's not a question in here. This is just literally me talking. So I apologize. Yeah.
No, I understand where you're going. And you heard Mitch Morse talk about it last year. It even impacts the offensive line. When you have a quarterback that is running all over back there, the offensive line is trying to fulfill its responsibility. And then all of a sudden you see your man across the line looking in a different direction, and you look, and Josh Allen is 15 yards away, and you're like, oh my God. But at the same time, as Mitch Morse said, you have to live with it, because that's Josh Allen, and that's what makes him a great player. And you touched on it earlier in terms of slowing it down and bleeding the clock. He's a little bit better when he doesn't have to do that, and he can just kind of go at his own pace. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. When you're in those bleed the clock situations, that's more of a scripted, more of a dial it back situation. And that's not what you do with a Mustang. I think someone has made this analogy before, but you just let them run free. And that's what you got to do with Josh Allen, while keeping the reins on him maybe a little bit, especially early in the season. You don't want him getting hurt in a QB sneak against the against the
Titans or
Washington
somebody
football
crazy.
team
Yeah.
or somebody
Yeah.
week 6.
Greg
you wanna see that for
Cosell.
playoffs.
Greg Cosell was that interview where Greg was talking about Josh not being a precision quarterback. Doesn't mean he's not dominant. He's just not a 3-step drop guy. That's just not what he does. Go ahead, Jerry.
No, I mean, we dealt with it with Flutie, right? I mean,
Yeah,
when you're an offensive lineman, you learn how to read the crowd. When you hear the oohs and the ahs, you know something's going on behind you, so you better lock on and run with your guy a little longer. But I think all these
You mentioned Flutie. I was going through some old stuff today, and I pulled out an old Rob Johnson jersey, and it was like stuffed in the bottom of a barrel, and it just reminds me of kind of how I thought of Rob Johnson.
Did it get sacked? Did it get sacked when you pulled it out immediately?
Easy.
Stuff it in the bottom of the box.
Jerry telling me to be careful. Nice.
Yes, be careful. Careful what you say. But no, the point I was trying to make was guys like Josh Allen that break out and, Joe talking, we're going to block the guys we're supposed to block. Running backs know who they got. But the quarterbacks know when they break out like that, if there's a loose runner, that's his.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his guy. And I think he's well versed at that and he's well comfortable with that. And that, that's how Flutie was. I mean, he's the same way. He didn't care. He's going to pump fake, make you miss, do whatever. But
Josh Allen just run through you or jump over you.
Oh, yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, John Fina has been very good on the Off Tackle with John Fina show, which is about to return with camp starting, just talking about, hey, inside 10 yards, like the quarterback's allowed to drop to 10. If he gets beyond 11, it's no longer the offensive line's fault. It's the quarterback's fault. And Josh is very much about dropping to 11, 12, and 13 yards. We have covered that a lot. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Before we let you go, and I got one more question for you. Tell everybody where they can find your content, where they can find you. You're a great follow, and everybody should follow you. So go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for letting me plug a few things at Alex Brasky on X. You can also read all of our coverage at the Daily News, and the website is thedailynewsonline.com. Also, Bill's Digest available for subscription. You can also get it in any Wegmans in the Western New York area. If you're at training camp, there's also copies in Wegmans in Rochester as well. A lot of content within that Bill's Digest training camp preview. A lot of writing over these past few months and a lot to think about entering this season. It's as exciting of a training camp, I think, as there's been in recent past. A lot of the starting positions have been decided, but I think a lot of the depth roles and maybe some new players just out there and the fans getting an opportunity to see them. So make sure you follow me. Make sure you read some stuff on the dailynewsonline.com and then Bill's Digest as well. And the Right Here, Right Now podcast. We'll be bringing daily updates from St. John Fisher University, myself and AJ Sobolski.
Yes, AJ also like Jerry, me, and John, former Buffalo Rumblings guys. But
yes,
AJ's
analysis.
Yes, AJ's awesome. So, real quick, last question: Von Miller. Von Miller has told us in the past that he's ready. He told us at one point in time 6 months. I'll be ready to go in 6 months.
Okay.
I'm full go. He said, right? This, that. Then he got benched last year. And then obviously we saw with our eyes, and then finally recently he came out and said, I shouldn't even been playing. And we were all like, no kidding. We all could have said he didn't even begin to look like himself until that playoff game against the Chiefs, where he was almost one of the most dominant defensive linemen on that field. How bad does this defense need him to be a very good version of himself this year, like of his old self? Last question for you.
I won't go as far as to say desperately, but they really need Von Miller to contribute, not only because of the money that he's making this season, but you lose Leonard Floyd and you didn't do anything to replace his production on the free agent market. You're really relying on him to return to somewhat of his form from yesteryear, and then A.J. Epineza and Greg Rousseau to take a significant step. And I think all three need to happen if this pass rush is going to make any meaningful impact. And you've seen the Bills over the course of Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott's entire tenure just try to move heaven and earth to solve this edge rusher issue that they've had. And it seemed like they did last year with Leonard Floyd. They brought in a great free agent, 10.5 sacks. You lose him after one season. So you really need Von Miller to work out and kind of go back to what you saw from him immediately when they brought him in that first year before he got hurt.
Super good.
And I also find it interesting with Bobby Babbitt Jr. And obviously he's a Sean McDermott guy, but it'll be interesting to see with some of the pressure packages they bring, especially with the healthy Matt Milano, with Bernard and some of these other guys. I think even Cole Bishop's a guy that you can get in the mix from safety. They're going to have to get creative if that outside rush can't be productive.
Yeah, and you saw them maybe set the stage for that with the way they moved Jordan Poyer near the line of scrimmage last year. Maybe you're setting the stage for Cole Bishop to assume a similar role this season.
Yeah, super, super exciting. Thank you so much, Alex, for this conversation. I know that you're looking forward to camp as much as we are. Have the best time. We look forward to having you on again. This was just a really
when we bring our actual Sunday afternoon game, not our second day of practice game today. I'm embarrassed and I apologize.
No worries. Hey, me and AJ, to take you behind the curtain, we did our podcast from MafiaCon live, and there was like music blaring next to us.
Yep.
And
I was there. I went first. I had to go first.
Yeah, we didn't have the microphone close enough to our mouth, so you can hear about 40% of the episode. So
yeah, when I walked up, I went first at 10 o'clock, 10:15, and then the panel between the founders, right? So Dell, Leslie, and Bree went, and then you guys went after that. And when you didn't have headphones on, I literally said to myself, "Uh-oh." Like,
from now on, do not be afraid to come up to me and say, "Hey, you might want to wear some headphones." And I don't know if I can swear on the show, a-hole. Immediately after we finished, I was like, because I don't use a mic in this studio, it comes across fine on my laptop mic. I hadn't used this microphone in a while, so I was kind of not as well versed with it. I thought to myself, you dumb A, there's a headphone jack in the thing, and it would have solved all of our problems. But at the end of the day, it was our first live experience like that at an event. So you live and you learn, as they say in this business.
$80, decent set of gaming headphones. Did it for Xbox.
Yeah,
I can't mess up my hair though.
All right, I gotta get us out of here. We've kept you way longer than we promised to, so I appreciate it. We all thank you so much for being with us. Can't wait to have you back on. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been tuned into the Overreaction on the Beat program here on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe. For myself, for Jerry Ostrowski, for John Fina, and for Alex Brasky. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills. There it is.